As a contemporary independent researcher of the African persuasion, irrespective of how thorough my research and analysis may be, I inevitably attract a substantial amount of criticism from those predisposed to and conditioned by the traditional Eurocentric perspectives. Some of these criticisms are fair, since no researcher will ever present flawless theories that everyone will agree with. However, a majority of these criticisms are largely based on lies, fabrications, poor academic process, and the questionable interpretation of data. Welcome to the Rebunked series, where we'll be directly addressing the claims made by our strongest critics. Don't forget to subscribe, as in this new channel we'll be tackling much broader areas of research and directly tackling some of the most controversial topics in history.
So I like to think up until that point, my proposition was quite clear, wasn't it? It was quite clear. I believe this has been deliberately painted or varnished. I actually think it was just a very thick, kind of opaque varnish, I would have said. So a very heavily coloured varnish is what I'm leaning towards, as opposed to an actual like full paint. But I made that clear in my argument, quite clearly stating that there's brush strokes on it. It has a high sheen finish, and the rest of the bust is painted. Okay, so that's quite clear arguments that I've stated in the video. Let's see what she has to say. If it's not severely damaged statues or statues with broken noses, then it's unpainted wood statues. Okay, so here's the proposition that they're making here. Please do note this. Her argument is that it's an unpainted wooden statue. Earmark that, please. This is a common theme among Afrocentrists, and yet not once during his rant did he offer any evidence proving that the statue of Queen Tai-ye was varnished. So apparently I offered no evidence. Single reference to substantiate his accusation, not one. Okay, so you guys heard that we watched the same video, didn't we? First of all, I made three quiet, clear observations as to why it was varnished. Okay, the first reason it was varnished was because there are visible paint strokes on it. The second reason why it was varnished is because it has a high sheen finish. And the third reason why it was definitely painted and it's not unpainted is because the rest of the statue is clearly painted, from the headband to the lips to the eyebrows and to the eye colors and the pupils. So that's three quite clear arguments, and yet gaslighting, this is the way that Eurocentrists roll, isn't it? She said there, I haven't substantiated. So she's just like, I rolled along and said, I was painted, I didn't say anything to substantiate it. This is the levels that we're dealing with, guys. But anyway, so let's substantiate my arguments now, because I've made them clear, but you know what we're like on this channel. We like to be very thorough, so let's substantiate everything. So let's start off with the visible brush strokes and the high sheen finish. I'm glad you guys can see the same close-up that I'm showing you right now. Does that look like unpainted wood for you? Do we agree that there are visible brush strokes on this? Do we agree that this high sheen finish that I've just stated is quite clear for all to see? Wood does not shine unless it's varnished. That's just the be all and end all. It is impossible to make wood shine to this extent without either varnish or some kind of painting. Okay, so it's quite clear that this is being painted. There are visible strokes. You can see visible brush strokes on the cheek over here, visible brush strokes over here, visible brush strokes beneath there. We have paint in the eyebrows, paint, eyeliner, paint in the pupils. You can't just pretend you don't see all that and then say it's unfinished wood. I mean, what levels of stupidity are we dealing with here that someone would say that this is unfinished wood? How far do you have to be within your own realm of madness and Eurocentrism to call this unfinished wood? There's clearly paint all over this bust. This is a finished, painted bust. A monkey could see that, honestly. Like, this is absolutely, it's the most asinine arguments you have to make when you're defending against Eurocentrists. Wouldn't it be good if, for comparison, we had a bust of, I don't know, let's say the same queen, maybe Queen T, that was actually unpainted wood for comparison? That would be really good. I wish that bust, oh, it does exist. So let's actually have a look at an actual unpainted wooden bust of Queen T, because it actually exists. Okay, and bear in mind, these busts of Queen T, of which there are numerous dozens, she doesn't use any of these in her video. And you can understand why, because they all are going to offer Eurocentrists the same level of disappointment. So here we have an unpainted bust of Queen T with exactly the same wonderful African features that she always has. Undeniable that that is Queen T. The eyes are exactly the same, the lips are exactly the same. But quick little shout out to the community there. What do you notice is different between the colour of the two busts? Okay, and I say this as someone who has, I'm quite extensive in carpentry. If I showed you my studio now, I could show you lots of stuff that I've made from different types of wood. Range of colours, I'll take that. Okay, it's not the exact answer, but Mr. Know-All, I will take that answer. It's the range of colours. The word I was actually looking for is grain. Okay, when a piece of wood is unpainted, what you will see is something called the grain. Okay, you also hear this described as veins, and you can also get this thing called knotting. I know all this because I actually work with wood quite often. Okay, I'm not going to go into why, but I know quite a lot about wood. All right, and I'm not going to say pause for all of you out there. Okay. So when it comes to wood, you have really two kinds of wood. Like if you're looking at major kinds of wood, you have two kinds of wood. You have softwood and you have hardwood. Okay, softwood is wood that grows quite fast. Okay, so as a result of growing fast, it never gets very dense, but as a result of growing fast, we have an abundance of it. So I'm just going to give you this quick education because it's important for these Euro idiots to understand, because they don't understand these really basic things. So softwood grows fast, and as a result of growing fast, it normally has quite spaced out veins, because the veins or the grain that you see in wood is actually the yearly growth of the wood. So imagine you get a tree trunk, and every year it expands, but then in the winter it kind of stops growing. Okay, and that's where the vein darkens and then it expands again. So softwood grows really fast. Pine, trees like that, that kind of wood grows very, very fast. But then you have hardwoods, and hardwoods grow very slow. Okay, hardwoods grow slow. And as a result of growing slow, they end up being very dense, and they have much finer veins and much finer grain. Now, the wood that is used in a lot of ancient Egyptian artwork, which is yew, is actually a softwood, but it's right on the precipice of being a hardwood. So it's a very firm softwood. So if I just zoom out on this, so I'm just kind of giving you guys the little bit of the science of it. You can see the veins, and can you see how the veins are quite relatively spread out in certain parts? That's very characteristic of this kind of wood, okay? But one thing that all wooden sculptures have in common is that you will always see veins, you will always see grain. It's what gives wood its character. So when you get a solid colour, like the bust of Queen T, you know instantly by looking at it, oak is a hardwood, well done, absolutely. You know instantly by looking at the bust of Queen T that this has been painted and or varnished. Instantly, because there's no visible veining. It's impossible to have an unpainted bust that doesn't show, or untreated wood that doesn't show some kind of vein, either fine veins, fine grain, or wide grain. And I could show you a million examples. I won't waste your time, but let's see a couple of examples. We can see obviously this one, which is perfect because it's actually Queen T. So this debunks the entirety of the Euro stupidity argument. Oh, it's unpainted bust that darkened because yew wood darkens. Yes, yew wood does darken, and this is an example of yew wood darkening. This is an example of yew wood darkening. You still have veins. It's quite clearly untreated wood. This is not an example of an untreated statue. This is an example of painstaking painting and touch-up work that has taken place. I mean, the fact that we have to prove this to these idiots goes beyond me, honestly.